Hey everybody, John Houlihan here. Welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a good day. Today, this is the second video in the Great Guitar Tone series that I started off earlier. The first one was Day Tripper by the Beatles. So today the song we're looking at is Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. And I think if you guys are guitar players, everybody's probably familiar with that intro riff that they do. So this isn't a guitar lesson, although I'll try to play it as well as I can. The idea here is that we're going to try to duplicate the tone using relatively simple stuff like my Fender Stratocaster and my Fender Blues Junior here. So we're not going to necessarily use, well, we won't be using the exact same equipment that they use to record the song, but we'll try to duplicate the tone as well as possible so you guys can go to your stuff and you guys can hopefully get pretty good results as far as the tone goes. Okay, I'm back. So I got some notes here because I don't want to forget anything. As I mentioned in the previous segment, the song we're doing is Sweet Home Alabama. It was recorded in Muscle Shoals, Alabama on June 15th, 1973. Song was written by Ed King, Gary Rosington, and Ronnie Van Zant, and produced by Al Cooper. This song has been covered many times. It has a really recognizable guitar riff, as I mentioned, with a tone that is specific to the Fender Stratocaster. So you're not going to get this tone on a Les Paul or any guitar with humbuckers on it. The original equipment that they used to record this, the guitar was a 1973 Fender Stratocaster owned by Ed King. And by the way, you guys can buy that guitar. So if you go online to Carter Vintage Guitars, you can see it's for sale for $450,000. The actual guitar they used to record the song. It's a little steep for me, so I'm just going to use my Stratocaster here. They used a Fender twin amp with an output of 100 watts. We're going to use a Blues Junior 15 watts output. And I believe the microphone they used was a Neumann U87. Those go for about $4,000. We're just going to use a Shure SM57 dynamic mic, goes for about $140. My equipment got a 1962 reissue Fender Stratocaster here. My amp, as I mentioned, Fender Blues Junior with a Jensen P12Q speaker. The only effects we're going to use are a Boss CS2 compression sustainer. That's it. And as I mentioned, the Shure SM57 microphone. Okay, so in the next segment we'll go through a little more detail, the tone settings and all that good stuff. Okay, now in order for us to duplicate the tone on Sweet Home Alabama of the very famous riff, there's one thing we're really going to need, and that is a Fender Stratocaster. That tone they're using is very specific to this guitar. So you're not going to get that tone out of a Les Paul or any guitar that uses humbucking pickups. You really need to use a Fender Stratocaster, which has single coil pickups. I doubt that you could match that tone even on a Telecaster, which also has single coil pickups, because the tone is unique in the sense that they are using the bridge pickup and the middle pickup out of phase, which is something I don't think you can do on a Telecaster. That's specific to a Stratocaster. So the selector switch, this is the bridge position, number 1 position I'm going to call that. So number 2 position here is the bridge and middle pickups out of phase. And that gives the very unique tone that you hear in that intro riff on that song. So very important, you got to use a Fender Strat, and the selector switch has to be in the 2nd position with the bridge and middle pickups out of phase to get that tone. This particular example of a Strat is a very nice one. It's a 62 reissue. It's not a real 62. It's a 62 reissue made in Japan. I've had this guitar for about 30 years and it's been a great guitar. So absolutely, for this to duplicate the Sweet Home Alabama tone, you are going to need a Fender Stratocaster, and you're going to need to use the 2nd position on the selector, these 2 pickups out of phase. Now, as far as the effects that we're going to use on this song, the only effect we're going to use at all is a Boss CS2 compression sustainer. So we're going to tame the dynamics a little bit with a compressor. The other pedals you see here we're not using. The noise suppressor is on, but that's just a noise gate, doesn't affect tone. So that's it. We're just using a compressor and then the natural sound of our Blues Junior tube amp. For Sweet Home Alabama, the tone they get, it's a very Fender specific tone, so we're hoping to match it pretty accurately because we're going to use a Fender Stratocaster and we have a Fender amp, although our amp is a lot different. It's a 15 watt amp versus a 100 watt Fender Twin. So that's it, just the compression sustainer, level set at 12 o'clock, sustain set at 12 o'clock, and the attack knob is in about the 3 o'clock position. Okay, so let's go over the settings we're going to use on our Blues Junior amplifier for recording Sweet Home Alabama. It's likely that in the studio when they originally recorded it back in 1973, they used a Fender Twin amp rated at 100 watts. This bad boy here, the Blues Junior, is rated at 15 watts. We're going to set the volume at 7, which is an indication of how hard we're going to drive the 12AX7 preamp tubes. We got the fat switches in the out position, so that's turned off. Treble is at 4. Bass is at 3. Don't need a lot of bass for this. Mids are at 4. And the master volume, we're going to run that at 3. So we're not driving the output tubes particularly hard. So we're probably going to record this at a much lower volume than they did in the studio with that Fender Twin. It was probably cranked and really loud, but we're going to see how we do. The reverb is at 1, which is basically off. So those are the amplifier settings we're using on our Blues Junior. Okay, so in Sweet Home Alabama, there's, 3 riffs going on, but the big one is the intro. That's the one everyone recognizes. So we're going to try that one first, see how that goes. I think we got the tone nailed down pretty good, so let's give that a go. Okay, so that's the intro riff. Okay, so as the song gets going, during the verse, they have another riff that's also pretty recognizable, not as much as the beginning one. And so now we're going to give that one a shot. So that's the riff they do when the song gets going during the verse. Okay, and then the final riff I want to do is the riff that occurs during the chorus, which is a slightly modified version of the intro riff. It's very much the same, but a little bit different. So we'll give that one a go. So that's the chorus riff, very similar to the intro, but a little bit different. It has the bend on the C note here. Alrighty.